So I feel like I've had enough time with these tires that we've got on the Tacoma now that I can actually talk to you guys about them. So today we're going to be talking about these new Motomaster Eliminator X Trail tires. Now, right off the bat, I want to be very clear with you guys that Canadian Tire is sponsoring this video, and they did give me these wheels and tires for free, and they're also paying me to review them. But if you're familiar with any of my other videos or any of my articles on the website, you'll already know that that doesn't mean I'm not going to be brutally honest about these. So first of all, let's talk about the tires themselves here. This is the new Motomaster Eliminator X Trail. It's an all-terrain tire. This is Canadian Tire's in-house brand of tires and car parts. And I know some people do have some questions about the quality and stuff when it comes to things like this. But one thing that really plays a big role here, guys, is that these tires are designed by Cooper. These are made by Cooper. So they wear the Motomaster badge on them, but this is essentially a Cooper off-road tire, which has, of course, a great reputation. And they're just making these for Canadian Tire. So the size that I'm running on the Tacoma, again, I'm not sure if you're familiar or not, but this is still at stock ride height. It's not lifted or leveled or anything. This is a completely stock second-gen Tacoma. And we're running a 265 75 16 on this one. And so these are smaller and skinnier than the ones that are on the 4Runner. If you're not familiar, the 4Runner has Goodyear Duratracs on it, and so that's what I'm mainly comparing these to. That's what my experience is with. And I'm running a set of NV ET2 wheels, just satin black, real basic design, fairly clean. So this specific tire that I'm running here, this size, these are load range E. And so I'm assuming that means that this is going to be a 10-ply sidewall. These are 3-peak and mud and snow rated. So these do really well in the wintertime, which is this was a huge focus for Canadian Tire when they were developing these. They wanted an off-road tire that's great in the wintertime. And the cool thing about these too is they're actually rated for 90,000 kilometers for a lifespan, which for an off-road tire, I think that's pretty impressive. I'll give you a bit of a close-up of the tread pattern here. You can see it's aggressive. It's definitely an off-road tire compared to other tires like the Duratrac or any mud tires. It's a little bit more mild of a tread design, but we'll get into that more in a little bit and why that's a good thing, at least on this specific truck. You can also see we got some pretty beefy side lugs on the sidewalls. And perhaps the biggest thing with these tires is the siping. And these tires have a lot of it. For an off-road tire, the siping, it looks a lot like a snow tire, where it's just every tread lug has a whole bunch of siping on it. And that makes a huge difference when it comes to wet weather performance, like whether it's wet roads or especially in snow and ice. That's one of the reasons why I've always said that the Goodyear Duratrac is the best off-road tire for the wintertime, because despite being a really aggressive off-road tread, those tires have some siping on them as well, that really sets them apart from traditional mud tires and stuff. And in comparison, these tires have a lot more siping on them than the Duratrac has. So I think that's a pretty big deal. That's what's making these really stand out from the pack in terms of winter performance. Now on this truck we have run a few different tire setups on it, at least since it's been in my possession. Originally it had some really bald, cheap, like Chinese all-season tires on it, and those were absolutely awful. This thing couldn't even make it up the driveway in the wintertime without spinning the tires, and it was pretty pathetic for a 4x4 truck. So then after that, I put the limited 18-inch wheels from my 4Runner on this, just the stock ones. And those still had the original Michelin, I think they were Defender LTX tires, which I guess technically is an all-terrain tire, but they're very mild, not really an off-road kind of a setup. And then the only other tire that I have to compare again is the Goodyear Duratracs on the 4Runner. And the 4Runner it's an overall beefier setup. I mean, it's lifted. It's got a bigger engine, and so I'm running a bigger size tire on it. So I guess we may as well start out with the on-road handling with these, which is how they spend most of their lives, because this truck is very much a daily driver. We don't really take it off-road very much. That's sort of what the 4Runner is for. This is, oddly enough, considered our fuel-efficient vehicle out of the two, which is a bit ridiculous now that I say that out loud. But anyways, this is more of a street truck. This is a daily driver that we want it to be ready for anything. We want it to be able to take us places if we need to, and we certainly don't want to be getting stuck anywhere, but it does spend most of its life on the road. So these Motomaster tires on the road are really good. The handling is great. Of course, it's not like a street tire because, you know, even just this tire size alone, you can see you got a good amount of sidewall on there, which is great for off-road traction and for a soft ride. But of course, this isn't going to handle like a sports car. It's not going to corner like it's on rails or anything like that. So there's a little bit of squirm if you're hitting an on-ramp a little too fast or something, but that's to be expected with any off-road tire, especially one in this size. Vibrations are not a problem at all. These, I mean, Canadian Tire mounted and balanced these for me, so I don't know what they had to go through to get them to be balanced, but I can see there are some wheel weights on the inside. Nothing out of the ordinary. I think still quite a bit less than what my Duratracs took. And these are perfectly balanced. This thing rides absolutely perfectly smooth. So no issues there. And I gotta say, for an E-rated tire, the ride quality is really good. I was a little bit concerned about that, especially being a pickup truck with no weight over the rear axle. I thought a really stiff sidewall of a heavy-duty tire like that is going to give us a bit of a rough ride on sharp bumps and stuff. In this case, I was really pleasantly surprised with just how smooth this thing rides down the highway still, even with no weight in the box. As for fuel efficiency, I mean, that's kind of the cost of doing business here. You know, we're running a bigger size than stock, and these are obviously a lot more aggressive than the stock tires. So the miles per gallon aren't that great. I didn't measure what kind of economy we were getting before on the 4Runner limited wheels, but I'm assuming it was better because those were just it was a street tire and probably a bit lighter weight. But this thing is definitely not a Prius. I mean, the one time that I did hand calculate the fuel economy, it was, man, I think it was about 15.5 miles per gallon on this truck, which at the time we were doing the same driving in the 4Runner as well to compare back and forth. It was mostly city driving, and the 4Runner was a whole mile per gallon worse still. And again, it's a 4.7 V8 with much bigger tires, but only a 1 mile per gallon difference between the two trucks. It was a little surprising to me. So I can't necessarily blame the tires themselves. It's more the size of the tire and just the style of tire that I chose to go with on this truck. And that's just the way that it is. If you want to have a tire that is capable of taking you anywhere, then that's the one downside. Now, perhaps one of the biggest things that we have to talk about when it comes to driving on the road with off-road tires is obviously the level of noise that they make. Because there's so many people out there that claim their off-road tires are completely quiet on the road, and man, you can hear them coming down the highway long before you can see them. I think people are just, maybe it's wishful thinking or something, but so that was another concern that I had for this truck. And I'm happy to report that, I kid you not, these are whisper quiet. I don't hear any road noise at all with these on the highway. And I know I've said before that the Duratracs on the 4Runner were really quiet for what they are. And again, for a really aggressive off-road tire, they are fairly quiet. Now, as they've worn, they've gotten worse, which is to be expected. But I think that's even more a trait of the Duratrac specifically. And the thing is, I know on videos that I've done with the Duratracs and the 4Runner, you might not be able to hear them humming too much, but keep in mind, the 4Runner also has a louder exhaust on it, right? It's got a Gibson exhaust. It's got headers and exhaust on it with the V8. And so on camera, the sound of the exhaust can cover up the sound of the tires. And I can tell you honestly that the Duratracs and the 4Runner are getting a little bit loud now as they age. Mind you, they've also got like probably 25, 30,000 kilometers on them, but they're getting loud. Now this truck, in comparison, this thing is completely stock. It's got a completely stock exhaust. And actually, you know what, to take a step further, the driver's side door seal is worn out on this thing. And so you can hear road noise, nothing to do with the tires. You can hear the wind blowing past you a little bit on this thing right now, and you still can't hear the tires. And that's just the truth. So when you're seeing video clips of this thing in action from inside the cab and you're not hearing the tires, you can probably hear the exhaust on this, and that's the sensor in the camera, like that's the microphone picking up even just the slightest sound of the exhaust. And as you can see, we're running a completely stock exhaust on this thing, and so you'll hear the exhaust on this and you won't hear the tires humming at all. And that's an accurate depiction of what these are like on the highway. So between the road manners and the level of noise on these tires, I honestly believe that if you hopped into this truck and didn't look on the outside and just got in it and just started driving, you would never know that this has a set of off-road tires on it. You would never guess, because it drives like a completely stock truck. It's completely quiet. It handles great. No vibrations or anything. You would never guess that this has a beefier set of tires on it. And that's exactly what I wanted for this truck, because this is my wife's truck and she's driving it around for work all the time. And there's no need for her to be rednecking around everywhere she goes. That's what the 4Runner's for. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to take this truck off-road with these tires, really. Partly just because we've been through the winter season, and there's not really any good local off-road trails that are legal that we can play around on around here. And also, the four-wheel drive on this truck is still finicky. It works, but it just doesn't engage every time. And I mean, what good is four-wheel drive if you never know whether it's going to engage or not for you? So hopefully in the future, that's one thing that I am going to do some reading up on, and I'm going to be making some content with that. And we got to fix the four-wheel drive actuator on this truck because I want to be able to use it properly. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with these off-road. Now, I can tell you that we have had this on its fair share of dirt roads, that's for sure. That's about as close to any off-road action as we've gotten, but it has seen a lot of dirt roads. They perform really great. One thing that I really noticed that I really liked about these is that they don't grab onto stones and fling them up at the truck anywhere near as much as the Duratracs do. Obviously part of that is because of it's a milder tread design. But regardless, that's definitely a plus side of these, that I don't think I've ever heard a stone fling up into the fender on this thing. Whereas the 4Runner, I mean, as soon as we get onto a gravel road, it starts throwing rocks like crazy. So that's definitely a plus for this Motomaster tire. But again, speaking of the more mild tread design, if you're into like hardcore off-roading, if you're going to be doing a lot of mudding and like really rough rock crawling and stuff like that, I'm not convinced that this is going to be necessarily the tire for you. Nothing wrong with the tire, but it's just the design of it. This is not really what you would shop for if you were doing a lot of aggressive stuff like that. This tire is more for daily drivers like this one, that you want to be able to go anywhere that you want to go still, but it does spend a lot of time on road, and you get the look of an off-road tire and the capability that if you do need to go off-road, you're going to be fine, but you get all the road manners of a less aggressive tire. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you want to be doing really aggressive stuff, don't expect that this is going to behave like a mud tire or even an aggressive AT like the Duratrac. Now, in terms of winter driving, as you can see, most of our snow is melting here in Ontario by this point. But I already did a video where I compared this truck with these tires back to back with the 4Runner and the Duratracs in one of the biggest blizzards that we've had in Ontario in quite some time. But anyways, long story short, I've always said that the Duratrac is the best off-road tire in the wintertime. I wrote a whole article about that, and I still stand by the fact that they are really good in the winter, especially in deep snow. They are still really hard to beat. But the truth is, and this is just being honest, this tire is absolutely better in regular winter driving conditions. So in hard-packed snow, ice, the kind of winter driving that you do every day. Like if you're living in a regular city that, you know, the plows are out sometimes, every once in a while you get a really deep snow. They perform phenomenally all winter long for us. Again, in hard packed snow and ice, the cornering and braking on this truck was so much better than the 4Runner. And understeer when you're first turning into a corner on a really slippery day, this truck would just bite right in and make the turn, whereas the 4Runner would kind of snowplow its way to the outside of the corner and even bounce into the curb or something. And I was really impressed with the braking performance as well, where this thing, it was as close to a dedicated snow tire as I've seen any off-road tire perform. Of course, this and the Duratrac, neither one of them are going to be as good in the wintertime as an actual winter tire. That's obvious, but in my experience and in my opinion, this is as close as you're going to get to snow tire and winter tire performance that you leave on year-round. You can take off-road and on the trails and drive on the highway in the summertime. It's really as close to the best of all the worlds as I think you can get. But speaking of the deep stuff, the way these tires perform is, again, maybe it's because of the slightly narrower size, but These will slip a little bit initially, and then eventually they're just looking for traction anywhere, and they'll kind of dig down, and then once they dig down, they grab right in, and away you go. It's a very predictable and sure-footed way of driving around in the wintertime, but I was really impressed by that. Even if you feel them slipping and you start to think you might be in trouble here, they will find traction, and they will all of a sudden just start chugging along and dig you right out. It's the same thing when you're sliding on a slippery surface too, like on a slippery road. If you're sliding sideways, yeah, they'll slip at first and you will be sideways, but eventually they'll find some kind of traction somewhere and they will dig in. I found that I actually had to give this thing quite a bit of throttle to keep these things spinning. Like, even if it would get sideways at first coming into a corner, it would want to sort itself out pretty darn quickly. And if I wanted to be an idiot, I had to kind of keep my foot on the pedal and give it some gas. And this poor little V6 doesn't have a whole lot of power to offer. So, but yeah, that's impressive. If you're just trying to drive safely, you really got to try to break these things loose. They're not just going to kind of spin out of control on their own. So the bottom line, guys, I have to say that I now think that these are the best off-road tires in the wintertime. I gotta say it. Overall, they outperform the Duratracs in everything but the deep stuff. I think they've got great on-road manners, especially for a daily driver. They behave a lot like a street tire. They just have so much more capability for if you do want to go off-road. They're a little less aggressive than other tires. I would say they're kind of comparable to like the BFG KO2s. They're kind of a similar tread design, but here's the kicker. These things right now on the Canadian Tire website, they're under $300 a tire, which in my opinion, that's a pretty good bargain. I did a little digging around. I wanted to see how they compared as far as price goes, and the KO2 and the Duratrac are both a bit over $300 a tire. Those Michelin LTXs that are on the Forerunner Limited wheels that I had on this thing at one point, those are over $330 a tire. So under $300 for these, yeah, there are Motomaster brand, but realistically you're getting a Cooper tire. It just has a different name on the sidewall. And I think that's a fantastic bang for your buck. This truck has been really sure-footed all winter in two-wheel drive, which is a really impressive feat, I think, especially for a pickup truck with, again, no weight in the bed or anything. This thing gets such great traction even in two-wheel drive. So that's my take on these Motomaster Eliminator X Trails. I would highly recommend you give them a shot, especially if you're on a budget. You don't want to spend big money on a name brand tire. I definitely would not be concerned at the fact that these wear the Motomaster name. Not that there's anything wrong with Motomaster in general, but these essentially are a Cooper tire. So based on my experience, again, 3,000 kilometers, I don't exactly consider this a long-term review or anything, but these also aren't brand new anymore either. We've been driving them all winter long. And so far, in my experience, these drive like a high-quality tire. This truck drives like it has a set of Cooper tires on it and not necessarily something from the auto parts store. And so I am super happy with them. They aren't going anywhere. They're staying on this truck. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Canadian Tire for sponsoring this video and giving me the opportunity to test these out. It's really cool that I have companies like them that are actually reaching out to me and wanting to work with me. And I want to do a lot more of that in the future, so definitely stay tuned to the channel, stay tuned to the website. Follow me on Instagram too. I'm trying to build that up because I want to share cool pictures and stupid reels that I copy from other people and make my own version of, and for some reason people like them. I don't know. Give me a follow on there if you want to, guys. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys on the next video. See ya.